Denise Gwynn, reading aloud for you from my novel, His Christmas Eve Proposal, Book 3 of the Medicine Women of Alaska, Chapter 3. As Drew left the practice that evening, he gazed up at the sky and smiled. He loved this time of year, the days of never-ending sunshine. With all the hours he put in at the office, he rarely spent any time outdoors. A lot of people didn't like this season, the days and nights of never-ending daylight, as they had to use blackout curtains to sleep. But he saw only the positive, for he rode his old mare Queenie every night. That was the joyous part of his day. And because he was loath to return to the house, he took his time brushing Queenie and cooling her down. He scraped her hooves clean, fed her, and laid down fresh straw. But there finally came a time when he had to return to the cabin. It was the same cabin he and Danielle had lived in during their marriage, a time when he'd believed her to be as happy and as in love with him as he was with her. But no, that'd been his mistake, thinking that she enjoyed relaxing in the hot tub or drinking hot cocoa in front of the fire. No, Danielle hadn't enjoyed any of those things. Correction. She'd enjoyed doing those things, just not with him. He glanced across the street to Dr. Schuster's new office and noticed the lights were on. Wow, what a hard-working lady. A wave of admiration filled his heart. He gazed past her clinic to the mountains beyond. The sun dipped below the ridgeline. He loved Alaska, and yes, he'd been lonely in the wake of Danielle's departure, but the rugged outdoors had compensated for that loss. He winced as he recalled his words from earlier in the day. He'd behaved badly. He'd behaved very badly. Quit berating yourself. He'd never experienced competition before, and now here it was in the form of an extremely cute lady doctor. Okay, stop this line of thinking. When the new ski resort and medical spa opens, there'll be plenty of work to go around. Things will settle down again, and I'll get my life back in order. Drew loped around to the back of his building, climbed behind the wheel of his rugged Dodge truck, and drove home. Despite his annoyance with people who talked on their cell phones while driving, he called Paul. He wanted to share with him the skirmish with Dr. Schuster. "Are you kidding me?" Paul chortled. "You declared war on that poor lady? I feel such a fool. You ought to, man." They talked some more, and Paul chided him for taking offense at the defection of the Darjeeling twins. "Heck, man, she did you a favor. Did you really want to have to deal with a pair of teenage girls?" Well, when you put it that way. Paul knew how to make him laugh at himself. "Do you think I ought to apologize to her?" "Not a bad idea," Paul said. The brothers ended their call. Drew switched on the radio, and what do you know? But the object of his frustration spoke to him from the radio with that sultry purr of hers. "I hope you'll check me out," she cooed on her radio ad. "I'm Dr. Naomi Schuster, and I'd love to be your doctor." Well, dang. He'd never considered advertising his practice on the radio. For the 40 years his dad had been running the practice, there'd been no competition. The times they are a-changing, and now Drew had some pretty stiff competition. The truth is, I'm getting old and stodgy and set in my ways. Her soft, melodious voice ended. A song started, and he decided to return to her office and make amends. He did a quick U-turn in the middle of the road and drove back into the village, hoping he'd find her before she left for the evening. He owed it to her. He sighed with relief when he saw the lights on at Dr. Schuster's practice. Good, he hadn't missed her. He jumped out of his truck, hurried over to her front office door, and leaned over the flower box to peek in through the window when he sensed someone close to him. He whirled around and yelled as someone chopped him hard between the shoulder blades. And in the next second, he landed on his back on the sidewalk with his arm pinned behind him. Dr. Naomi Schuster gazed down at him with a look of confusion. "Hey, what the heck, lady?" "What in the world?" Naomi cried. "What's the matter with you?" "Sorry, I thought you were an intruder." "Clearly I'm not." "Then why were you trying to break into my office?" She lessened her grip on him, and he rolled free of her grasp, craned his neck around, and spat out gravel. "Is that really you, Dr. Rutherford?" "Yes, of course it's me. What in the world are you doing?" "Do you need a hand?" she asked. "Not after you assaulted me." He lifted himself up and sat on the curb, nursing his sore arm. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Rutherford. I didn't realize it was you. I was frightened when I saw someone sneaking around." "What in the world were you doing sneaking around my office? I thought you'd left." "Hey," he said with sudden interest. "How'd you do that?" "I'm a black belt in karate, in taekwondo," she said with a shy smile. "Caught you by surprise, didn't I?" Yes," he said, stroking the back of his neck. "I'd have to agree with that assessment." He remained on the curb. She held a hand out for him. "Seriously, need help getting up?" "Will you toss me over your shoulder again?" No," she said with a grin. "As long as you don't threaten me in any way." "That's all the confirmation I need." She held out her hand and he grabbed it, giving an extra squeeze. Her heart fluttered at the strength and warmth in his hands. He had good, strong hands. It marked the first time they'd touched. Drew grunted as he got to his feet, and when he stood up fully, his face was only inches away from her own. She gazed at him and noticed for the first time his warm brown eyes. How'd she fail to notice his brown eyes? He flashed a crooked smile. "Taekwondo, eh?" "That's right. A necessity for a single woman living in Los Angeles." "I can imagine." A funny little moment passed between them. He dusted off his jeans. "I hope you know I wasn't trying to break in." "I realize that now. As a matter of fact, I came over to apologize for being so unpleasant earlier today, but I'm starting to reconsider." "Oh dear, you got a cut." She reached forward and traced her fingers along his forehead. "Come inside and let's get you cleaned up." "You're inviting me in?" He deadpanned. "You're not calling the police on me?" She took his arm. "Come on, silly. Let me make it up to you." As he walked in behind her, he said, "Wow, your waiting room is really nice." She whirled around and gazed at him. "Really? Yes, he said ruefully, much nicer than mine. Oh, well, thank you. She pushed open the door to the waiting room and led him down the hallway to the first exam room. She walked in and went to the cupboard. Her temp agency nurse was tall and had put the items she needed on a high shelf. She reached up on her tippy toes, but still couldn't reach. Here, do you need help? He brushed up right against her, and she inhaled at the aroma of his cologne. It tickled her senses. What am I looking for? He asked. The ointment. This stuff ought to be on a lower shelf for you, he said, handing the bottle to her. As she took it from his hand, again, their fingers touched, and a frisson of desire swept through her at the sudden, intimate contact. He gazed down into her eyes, and she was struck at the warmth of them. He blurted out, "Gosh, you're pretty." She sensed her cheeks flaring with color, and she looked away. "Okay, then, let's get you fixed up." "Sorry," he said. "Come on back to the chairs," she said, then added, "It's okay." She walked over to the sink, washed her hands, put on gloves, then walked back to him. "Okay, now this is going to sting a little," she said, using her familiar patter as if he were a patient. As she applied ointment to his forehead, he flinched. "Oh, don't be such a baby," she crooned. He remained still and waited as she first cleaned the scratch, applied the ointment, then placed a tiny Band-Aid on the cut. "There, all fixed up." "Thanks," he said. "Don't mention it," she said. Naomi stood over him, holding the ointment. She was so close to him she could kiss him or perch on his lap if she wanted to. And she suddenly did want to do just that. Her desire was so strong that she lost her breath. He looked away, and the moment passed. But she wasn't through with him. No, not by a long shot. "By the way, what in the world were you doing, peering into my office like that?" "Oh, that. Yes, that." He closed his eyes and inhaled. "You smell nice." "And I was checking out the competition." "Oh, nice," she said tartly. "And how'd that work out for you?" "Not too great. The doctor decked me." They laughed. "I think you deserved it," she said. "Yeah, I think I did." Naomi's knees started knocking together and her body trembled. The flirting was getting too intense. Her chemistry with him was ridiculously good, but then again, her chemistry with another man had once been ridiculously good too. And look where it got her. A runaway bride. Condemnation in the press. Reporters hounding her. Her face splashed across every tabloid known to mankind. "Are you okay?" he asked. Ha! If only he knew. "Yeah, I'm fine." She turned her back to him and put the ointment away on a lower shelf and used the moment to compose herself. "Besides," he said in a conversational tone, "it's not like there aren't plenty of patients to go around." "Yes, that's true. I should get going," he said, "and I promise not to barge in on you anymore." She turned back around to face him and forced a smile. "See to it that you don't." He stood up. "After all, I don't want to end up in the hospital." "I agree. A bad idea." She pulled off her surgical gloves and tossed them into the trash. Keep it light, keep it light, keep it light. He walked to the door. He grabbed the door handle and looked over his shoulder at her. Why was he looking at her like that? Did he want her to kiss him? Was he silently asking her to break with reserve and do just that? I'll see you later, Dr. Schuster, he said, and closed the door behind him.